Film reviews with Thomas Pryor, aka Trigger. Trigger's film reviews. Today I'm going to be reviewing a classic film that came out in 1978, The Wild Geese. Starring Richard Harris, Roger Moore, Richard Burton, and Hardy Kruger, who passed away there in 2022, I believe it was. It's a film that was ahead of its time, shined a light really on all the political sort of chaos that was going on in the 1970s, but more or less a Hollywood action film, really, and but also a classic, British, war drama film, war action drama film, about a group of mercenaries who go to a fictional African country, to rescue a deposed head of state, and are caught up in the wildfire, and are trying to escape. And I think really the style, the sort of the panache behind, the inspiration for making the film was kind of more or less like like other classic war films that were made and produced by Hollywood in the 1970s, like what do you call that one? Bridge on the River Kwai. The other one, what was it called? Hardy Kruger and Sean Connery were in it. Or The Eagle Has Landed. They weren't in that one. Michael Caine was in that one, but it credits itself, The Wild Geese, on it's sort of like it's stereotypical sort of British character behind it. And it was its technical director or advisor was your man Mad Mike Hoare, who passed away. I remember reading about this in 2020. Now I remember reading about a book on mercenaries back in 2019, and reading about the exploits of several mercenaries who went to several countries: the Congo, Rhodesia, South Asia, all over the world. The most prominent mercenary of all time, I would say, would have to be Mr. Mad Mike Hoare himself, who was a mercenary during the Congo sort of like war in 1961. But the inspiration behind the title of The Wild Geese was borrowed off of the Wild Geese, who were Irish exiles to the continent of Europe in the 17th century. The Siege of Limerick was a very prominent event in our history. But Patrick Sarsfield led a garrison of Jacobite soldiers against Williamite forces, and I think it's very prominent because there are several kind of different themes at play here. I think when it came to the film, it was written by the Rhodesian author Daniel Carney, called The Wild Geese, and the film is pretty much based off the book. And another thing worth mentioning as well, Hoare was also a mercenary leader during the Seychelles coup d'etat of 1981. or 4 years after the Wild Geese was released. You know, and it's basically it's so thematic because, you know, there's all these different elements at play here. You know, about the topic of mercenaries, and the topic of, like, there was private armies, private soldiers. You know, guns for hire, and going off to fight other countries' wars for whatever financier is backing them. You know, and I think maybe it shines a light on political sort of conflicts when it comes to money funded, you know, and of course geopolitical geopolitical. I mean, this film was obviously came out and was set during the Cold War. You know, the alliances, the West, you had the West, America, and you had the USSR, and they were both competing each other in Africa and other satellite countries as well. The cast was impeccable, really. Obviously, the first to pass away at that time was Richard Burton. You know, who was we all remember from Cleopatra. We all remember from a lot of very famous films of that time. You know, he unfortunately passed away of a heart attack in 1985 or 84. Richard Harris passed away in 2003. A legendary actor from Limerick. I think the film probably you know, was relevant. It probably was very relevant and right enough to cast you know, Harris as a, you know, British mercenary Ray for Janders. Roger Moore passed away in 2017, and the last to go was Hardy Kruger. You know, who God, he was in that film. What do you call it? He played a SS officer or something like that. But Kruger himself would go on in later life to denounce, you know, fascism, especially the crimes that happened committed by German soldiers, you know, during the Second World War, and then also, like, in the modern sense, you know, we see the rise of neo-Nazism all across. Unfortunately, we see the rise of the true far right that's going on all across Europe. And so he was a prominent spokesperson, a campaigner against all that stuff. Actors are activists, you know what I mean? Sometimes they use their voice to shine a light on a lot of difficult issues, and, you know, are campaigners in that sense. A classic film, The Wild Geese. You know, I mean, one of the best war films I've ever watched. They made a sequel in 1985, Wild Geese 2, with Edward Fox and Laurence Olivier. His final film role ever was 1985's The Wild Geese 2, where he plays Rudolf Hess. You know, an elderly Rudolf Hess who spent the last years of his life in Spandau prison in Berlin with a around the clock guard monitoring the perimeter of the prison. So they don't make films like that anymore. They just don't.